Welcome back to Real Builds. We're here at the secret lair of Real Builds, back looking at Terry's 57 Chevy project. And Terry can't be with us tonight, but Bill is going to give us an update on where we're at with the plumbing and the steps going forward.
So we left off where we were just making up some pieces to illustrate how the brake lights were going to run and getting ideas based on suspension travel and component locations to make sure that we were good to go. So Terry's gone ahead and started to build out the brake lines. This is obviously copper covered nickel. So what we do with these is once these are close, we'll get the ends on them and tweak them for fit, and then they actually come back off the car. They'll get polished so that they look like the front ones, and then we'll do the final install and put them back on the car. One of the things that came up during this process as we tried to fit electrical, air lines, brake lines, cooling, transmission lines, is having a really clear idea of just how much real estate you have. All of this space gets filled up really quick. So last time you were here, we didn't actually have a motor and transmission in the car. So we took as you know, we're doing a 6.2 liter, but we took a 6 liter short block that we had in the shop and a 6L80E, and utilizing a Transdat swap kit for small block to LS, we've tweaked that to get the motor in the chassis. It took a little extra tweaking. There's a couple of washers on the one side here that took up some extra space to get it to fit just nice. As you can see, we've just got the rear mount blocked in. But what we've made sure is that the chassis is all level, square corner to corner, so that we can set up our driveline angles. And we have a little angle finder gauge here from Competition Engineering. And we're looking for a driveline angle of 4 degrees, which we've achieved. So one of the things that we see is that this is an incredibly large powertrain. The transmission specifically is very big. There were several components that we had to purchase aftermarket-wise to make this fit. So one was the motor mounts that I mentioned. We're going to fabricate the rear mount. The original oil pan would not fit in the car. This particular car is being fitted with a Flaming River rear rack, power steering rack. The folks at Flaming River, when we put this in, their original rack assembly for a 57 has the power and return lines for the power rack coming out of the back of the tube, and it interferes with the swap oil pans. So they were kind enough to take that back, and they're going to swap that for one where they've spun the tube 180 degrees, bringing the fittings out the front, creating a lot less interference with the pan, so that should be back next week. The other thing that we notice is that even though we've got the driveline angle correct, and we've got the transmission up quite high as you'll see in the car, it still sits very, very low in the chassis. The front corner of this Holly pan clears by about 1/8 of an inch. And we went with a specific pan. There's a couple swap pans. We used a 302-2 pan, and the reason for that is it has a more aggressive slope on the front of the pan that fits into these earlier chassis better, so it's not as deep as using the GM Performance pan or the Holly 302-1. We're hoping that it clears the rack. We'll see how that goes when the rack comes back. But so far the pan's of very good quality and fit very well. The other thing that we've got to consider in our plumbing exercise is cylinder heads and headers. So we're going to go with a set of Headmans. They're a 3/4 length designed for pro touring applications because we don't want to have any collectors hanging down below the frame. We will have to modify them because they're not designed or engineered for a rack, and we know that where the steering column is going to come through, we're going to have challenges with tube fit there. But that's okay, we'll take care of those. The one thing that I'm a little bit concerned about is if you look at the transmission and you look at how deep it is, that transmission pan actually hangs below the frame quite a distance, about 2 inches. So we've got everything else tucked up nice and high, but we may want to look at modifying the transmission pan because it sits proud of the rest of the car. And of course, being on air, one of the goals is going to be to get it as low as possible, and we don't want any harm to come to the transmission pan. Moving back, as we can imagine, we're going to have our headers and our exhaust in here. And then back here, you're gonna have mufflers. On Terry's application, he's hoping to take the exhaust out in front of the back wheels. Because of the 4-bar airbag arrangement in the back, this cross member, we don't have a lot of room to get the exhaust through. The only option we would have for taking the exhaust out to the back of the car is actually to go under the cross member and under the differential. And he hasn't quite decided if that's something that he's interested in. Another challenge that we're going to have is, you can see here, here's our drive shaft, going to go in here. This shaft is about 57 or 58 inches, so we're getting into max length for the kind of power that we're going to make with our 6.2 liter, and that puts us certainly at a 4-inch drive shaft and perhaps at a 4.5, and of course the hole that we have here is only 5 inches. So it may be a situation where we revisit this cross member to actually make the hole big enough here to fit the larger aluminum drive shaft. If we're going to do that, then we could revisit the notion that we change the cross member completely around to more easily facilitate an exhaust system. So we'll see how that goes, but these are the types of things that you've got to give consideration to. If you can get the end vision of the car in mind and figure out where a lot of these big pieces go first, it makes the build a whole bunch easier. So we'll get some more of this done and get back to you as we make some progress over the next couple of weeks.
Great, thanks, Bill. We're just going to step back and take a look at the chassis overall and how things are sitting in it. A lot of work's been done, lots to go, of course. But you can see now how we were talking about how the 6.2 sits, the front airbag suspension, and how all the pieces are coming together. It's going to be a thing of beauty when it's done, but there'll be lots more steps on the way. And you'll be hearing from us here on Real Builds.